Welcome back. And before we get into today's, I'll start over again. Welcome back. And before we get into today's episode, I just want to give a quick shout out of appreciation to the Hitting Your Stride listenership that is growing down in the States, over in the UK, Australia, and Germany. I am very grateful for your following and support. Today's guest is the true definition of an entrepreneur, and she also loves horses. Nicole Verkindt is a woman who has vision and a passion for entrepreneurship. She specializes in the world of technology and innovation, and she is the founder of OMX, the Offset Market Exchange. Nicole's most recent innovative venture is guestlog.co, and this is something that anyone who has been to a horse show recently would have firsthand experience with. Welcome, Nicole.
Hey, Tracey, thanks a lot for having me.
Well, thank you for taking the time out of what is a very busy schedule. So I appreciate you taking a little bit for me. Awesome. Okay, so let's start this off. Who is Nicole Verkindt, and how did she become one of Canada's top 40 under 40 entrepreneurs?
Oh boy. And you're asking me this question. I mean, I have no idea. I do know when I graduated from business school, this was pre-2008 crash. We were coached at that time that there was two paths that you could take. So there was one fork in the road and there was two options. The first option was to be an investment banker. A lot of people were moving to New York. And the second option was to be a management consultant. So I went through the interviews to be a management consultant and I completely flopped the interviews. I mean, I look back and I was wearing these pantsuits. It was just so uncomfortable. And so, I left business school in a state of complete, I was distraught. I was just confused. And I actually worked on the backstretch at the Woodbine racetrack as a hot walker. I had, as a kid, gotten all of my horses off the racetrack. And so sort of had a relationship there. And so people always say, like, how did you get started out of the university into this like straight line entrepreneurial path? Like, well, let me tell you, yeah. I didn't get a business card for that job. Anyway, so I started there and then I sort of felt around and fell into sort of the next few roles that I took on. I went straight into entrepreneurship. My first venture was a manufacturing business. We were manufacturing offshore. And so I had a great 5 or 6 years living in the Caribbean, and we were sourcing product and selling online, which was kind of way ahead of our time in 2007. And then I started a tech platform to automate a portion of the reporting that I was really comfortable with. And then as that company grew and started to do really well, then I branched off and invested in a lot of tech companies. I've been an angel investor now for, I don't know, a little while, probably 5 or 6 years. So I've invested in a dozen companies. I'm advising. I'm buying and selling tech companies. In fact, Guestlog, the one you mentioned, I actually bought that company full out just before COVID started, or at the start of COVID, to be a contact tracing solution. And then it's expanded into digital waivers and facility clearance and some other stuff. So, and then I'm helping companies with their M&A as well. So helping e-com companies sell their businesses through a platform called Clearco. So we're launching a marketplace. So anyways, there's all sorts of stuff going on, but it definitely didn't start as a career path. I think a lot of people were making fun of me. I'm sure they had their comments about what the hell I was doing with my life.
You go from the Ivey Business School to the the back of the Woodbine racetrack. That's awesome though.
Yeah, my direct boss was a guy named Shaky because he always had the shakes from the night before. And I had to, beg him every 2 weeks to give me a pile of cash because there was no payroll. It's just funny to think that.
But doesn't that go to show you, like, you can have the best of intentions in something and like, this is my path, and then off you go on a totally different route, but there's always a way to get to where you want to go.
I think it's an important message for people to know that there's like that GIF where you say, oh, this is your path. And you go like squiggly lines and then backwards and then down and then up and then like finally the direction. And so I just think that it's really, and there's a lot more of that now, talking about how failure is an important part of the process. And so I just think it's a really critical message to give young people as they leave school, that this is just how she goes, and to know that it's normal.
Yeah, absolutely. I know mine's been a path of all over here and there. And then, and I just sort of keep my focus, and I keep my vision or my passion and what I believe in. Right. And I just, always just keep pushing. Yeah.
Good on you. Great.
Thank you. All right. So what can a horse teach you that being an entrepreneur never will? And how did you apply those lessons in your life and business?
Oh my gosh. Well, around that time that I was telling you about in 2007, I sold my horse. Still to date, I think was my favorite horse I've ever had. He came off the racetrack and I evented him, and, I bawled my eyes out for weeks when I sold him. And then I didn't go near a horse again until my 30s. So there was, I don't know, 15-year gap or something, where I didn't go near a horse. And then I got back into it, and, it all came flooding back, and I was just having way too much fun, and I like to go fast and take risks. And, but, I've been at it now, riding again for maybe 5 years. And, it's amazing what it can do. I think it's really good for your ego is the one thing, in the sense that, like, I was on that upward trajectory. I got back into riding. Everything clicked right away. Like last winter, I had 2 amazing jumpers. We were schooling 1.30 m courses at home, and everything was great. And then one goes lame, and the other we have a bunch of problems with. And a year after I was on top of the world, I'm now, riding a greener wild thoroughbred that dumped me 2 days ago, and I had a black eye. And so I just think that I think that they can really teach you that you can't just push harder and it's always going to work. It's not like some sports, I think of sprinters. I'm sometimes jealous of like Olympic sprinter. You just put more hours in, you push harder, you put more. I'm sure it's more complicated than that. But with horses, there's so many factors. And I think the number one thing it teaches you is this level of patience, and this level of, you can't have control over everything. And I don't know if you're like this, but I unfortunately am like a type A+ person that's also trying to try to be around horses where they have their own emotions and opinions. And so, that's the best part about it too. And I just came to a place, there's a Netflix show called Losers that I highly recommend to anyone who's in sports. And it talks about all these great athletes over time that lost, or they were second place, over and over again. And there's one episode about this, I can't remember what they're called, the dog racers, husky racers, dog sledders. This woman was always second. This huge race year after year after year. And at the very end, she says, I just like hanging out with my dogs. And it was for me, that meant so much to me. And I got like a little teary-eyed watching her, because that's how I feel about horses. It's like in business and other worlds, I like have to win. It's like, I have to be, it's like, it has to be this upward trajectory. But I think that if you're in horses, they are not a sports car. You're not a Formula One racer. And I think that if you can learn to just enjoy that and be around their personalities and get to know them and realize that some are jerks and some are really nice. And I think that process and enjoying that process is such a critical thing to learn.
So what kind of advantage do you think knowing this about the horses have you been able to bring into your business self? Like, do you feel like the horse have taught you something that other business women and businessmen don't know, that gives you a little bit of upper edge in communication or how you interact?
I haven't thought about that. I'm sure there is. Just talking about entrepreneurial ventures, like the word patience is so hard for entrepreneurs. We all want things done yesterday. It's in our nature. We don't clock in and clock out. We don't work 9 to 5. And so I think that every entrepreneur I've ever met is always in a hurry, right? The light turns green at a stoplight and they're like, rah!
Yeah.
So I think for sure that to have this other side of you and to learn that piece, I think no matter what, it's definitely going to be really important.
Yeah. Good. All righty. So I try to empower my listeners by inspiring them to think about their equine businesses in new ways. So your quote, "Get comfortable knowing there will be little failures along the way. They are a part of the process," speaks to the heart of what I try to convey. How do you get people to embrace that and find growth opportunities amongst the bumps in the road?
Well, years ago, I started doing public speaking. I was on a TV show. I was on a podcast in the States called The Pitch. So I started kind of stepping back, and I spent some time really understanding what the great innovators have done, and not just innovators, even looking at like Einstein's process to come up with a theory of relativity. And they all had something completely in common. And when you sort of put their paths next to each other, there was three things that I identified that all of the great innovators and achievers have had. The first thing is that they collaborate really well. And so I find it fascinating that when I meet a young entrepreneur, they'll say, not all of them, but a lot of them say, I have this great idea, but I can't tell you what it is. Right? They want to keep it to themselves. They want to work on it in their basement. They want to work in a silo. But I look at my experience, and I brought in all of our customers, suppliers, wholesale, and they helped us continue to improve, and they were part of our process. And so there's lots of examples of great innovators that were really, really good collaborators. And then the second thing is that they always fail a million times, not once. They always fail. It's part of that process. And as soon as they failed, I mean, you look at, I can't even begin to tell a story. It would take the whole podcast. As soon as they failed, they iterate. That's the third thing. So they collaborate, they fail, and they iterate. And they actually take that process and they recycle it over and over and over again. And it's a continuous process. Sometimes they go through it 20 times in one day. Sometimes they go through it in a year. That is the process. And it's not a new process. It's been going on for hundreds and probably thousands of years. So when I kind of drew those parallels out, I said, we've got a pattern here. And I think that it's critical. Like, do you know what the Pythagorean theorem is? Somebody's used this long word. They go, well, you knew in grade 11, right? It's like, no, I do not. I don't remember anything I memorized in school. Why didn't they teach me what the process is for critical thinking, critical improvements? And so, you look at that process, and it's really empowering when you realize it, because you realize you can apply it to absolutely anything you want to do. Mm-hmm. And so how do I get people to embrace that? I think it's about messaging, and I think it's about messaging to people really early on, because I look at my path and I didn't know that was a critical part of the process. If I hadn't known, I would have spent last nights, lying on my cold bathroom floor, upset, thinking that this would never work out, because I thought that when you fail, it means that you fail and that you are a failure, and that, the money you took from friends and family and investors, you couldn't pay it back, and now you're a failure. But no, you squeeze out every last penny, you do things for free, you get help from people for free, and then you iterate and you change and you continue to grow from there. Like the original concept for OMX, the company that I started 10 years ago, it was so different than what it was when it reached its true ability to scale. Completely different product.
Right.
And
right.
So I think, I don't like hockey at all, but we're Canadian, so it's fine. You just have to be on the ice. You just have to be on the ice, and you have to be trying things. And knowing that the failure is actually, if you're not failing, it's a really bad sign. And I think we need to tell more people about that, because it will help them.
Wow. I love that. That is going to be my new favorite quote. Thank you. I feel like I'm sitting here in like the lecture hall listening to you. I'm loving this. That's my entrepreneur at heart speaking. And yeah, this is what I want, like these riders that are setting up new businesses that are, everything that all this, because they're riding in the barn and dealing with people and they're not in an office necessarily. I mean, It's all the same thing, right? They're setting up their own structures, their own, business model and all. Well, hopefully they are, but something to learn from. Wow. That's amazing. Thank you for that. All right. So, from a woman who won the Startup Canada Woman Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2017, what advice would you give to women in the equestrian industry that would help them feel free to be confident in who they are and to take those leaps of faith that innovation stems from?
Oof, yeah, I mean, it's not easy. I think that they need to know that it's okay to do it while not feeling confident, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think that you can force a level of confidence. I think a level of confidence comes after you've succeeded to an extent, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know, that saying, like, that person's on fire. There's a reason I think that that saying exists. It's like once you get real positive momentum, then more and more good things happen to you. And you kind of have this very positive snowballing effect. But you don't really feel those feelings of confidence until you start to get at least some small wins. And for a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of studies that show women in particular, it takes a lot more to get their level of confidence up. So for me, when I think about that question, I think that it's important to know that most people don't feel confident in the early days, and that's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I mean, it feels like a million years ago when that
Right.
award happened, but they asked me to get on stage and talk about, you know, the first moments of starting my business and how I felt in that moment. And I did a little speech about the first time I went out for lunch with our very first investor. And it was like paying for a $9 pad thai. I found a screw in my lunch. That was the story. And I ended up getting it for free, but I went back after. So he didn't see that. But, you know, I had no confidence. We were broke. It was just, it is helpful to think back to those days and just remind people that are getting started that, you know, I wasn't like an outspoken, confident person when I got started.
Right. So it's baby steps, right?
Yeah, and small wins.
Yes.
And small wins. And knowing that feeling of being on fire is like once you get started, it starts to have flywheel effects, which is amazing.
Yeah, no, I've experienced some of those where all of a sudden everything's just rolling. You've got momentum, your energy is totally up. You feel like you can conquer the world. You come up with new programs or ideas, and yeah, it's an awesome place to be.
And you get hit a couple more times and you're back to another spot and then you work your way back.
Yeah. I guess for the entrepreneurial spirit, it is a little addictive in a way, right? Like, I like the challenge.
You're a special kind.
Yes. All right. Can you share with us the story of the $12,000 futurepreneur loan that you got and how it opened you up to working with a mentor?
Yeah, sure. Actually, it was so long ago and I was kind of this arrogant, like, I don't know how old I would have been, my late 20s. And I took this tiny grant. It was a grant. No, it was a loan. It was a loan. That's right. From the government organization, or I don't know if Futurepreneur is government, but anyways, right when they assigned the documents, they said, well, you have to do this mentor program. So I don't want to do a mentor program. I got too much else to do. I'm really busy. I'm just starting a company. So they forced this on me, and I meet Jim, my mentor. And I was like, I was really bratty. And I just said, you know, I don't want to be here. I've got lots of other things to do. And he said, that's okay. We're just going to meet once a week. It won't take too much time. And, you know, it's 8 a.m. to this time. And what he did was he basically, I think it's really important that you get a mentor who has no interest in your business. And that is the most important piece of advice I have. No, they cannot be your shareholder, your investor, your customer, your employees. They need to be sitting outside of it enough, I believe, that they are completely impartial. So he was definitely that. and he had experience and he'd been there and done that. And they need to have done pretty much exactly what you're about to do. I think that that's critical too. So he had started multiple tech companies before, and he had not raised huge amounts of outside capital. He had done it all himself, from the ground up, which is what I was taking on at the time. And they need to not be your friend. So Jim, who's now my friend, I love Jim. He would sit me down and, how many more days till you run out of cash? 3 weeks. And then, next, 3.5 weeks. So we used to call it the runway, right? Everyone calls it the runway. How much longer do we fall off the edge? And I used to keep the number of days in my dining room on a big whiteboard in the early days. But anyways, he would give me actions. You said you were going to renegotiate this. You said you were going to call this person. You said you were going to, and so we would have, not too many, maybe it was 5 that could really move the needle. And then the following week, we would start the meeting. What's going on with the 5 things we said last week? Mm-hmm. And so there was this level of accountability that when you're an entrepreneur, I mean, if you raise a lot of money, you have a board, they become your boss. And part of me argues that you're not as much an entrepreneur because they're telling you what to do. But most entrepreneurs, it's really hard to tell them what to do, right? They have an instinct. Some of us will wake up in the morning and change our mind on what we're going to do that day because we got excited about something else. And so it was really good for me to have somebody that every week could say, okay, Nicole, you said you're going to do these things. Where are they? Show me, bring them to the meeting. And it was just a very, very helpful process for me to go through that. Especially in the early days when, that's the time when your company is going to fail, is kind of in that first year or two. People get distracted. Early stage investing is very hard because a lot of founders, decide to change their career 6 months into their startup, or get in huge fights with their co-founders, or it's a very precarious time.
Right.
Anyways, so I'm a huge proponent of that program and that formal mentorship element to it, because it just really helped me personally.
Nice. Yeah. Even though you were resistant to it, you were able to have an open mind and go,
so resistant.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it kind of sounds like the process that I work with my coaching clients. I have some coaching clients that want to start up a new business or that wanted a different job. It's not always within the horse niche. Exactly. But yeah, that's what I do. I'm like, all right, let's set up some goals. And then what are you going to show me by our next call, kind of thing. And I have a coach and I love it. Right. Like,
that's great.
I've got a call with him on Monday and I've got 3 things to be accountable for. So
good.
Yeah,
it's not like we're just sitting here chit chatting. It's like we have goals to achieve. We need, that's great.
Yeah, it's exactly. Awesome. Well, I'm glad. So do you have a mentor still now, or do you mentor anybody?
I don't have, I don't on either side of that. Okay. But I have a lot of informal mentor relationships kind of on both sides. So my 2 main investors in OMX, I consider them I worship them. They've just been the greatest investors. And I've heard horror stories of entrepreneurs taking capital from people. And then anyways, I had a great relationship with my investors, and there's been lots of other people. I surround myself with founders. I just do. I mean, even the work I'm doing, I'm going to announce it in 2022, but I'm doing work with Clearco, which is a platform for founders, and we're launching a new platform. And like every call I have is with a founder, and it's like I couldn't be happier having those conversations because you can all relate on a similar level. And then I am mentoring people, but more informally. I'm not a coach. I'm not the type of person that's going to tell you. It's just not me. Yeah. So what I've said to people is, if you want to text me or email me with specific things you want help with, or you want me to help look at your financial model or this kind of thing, go for it. And so that's what I'm doing now anyways.
Nice. Well, pay it forward, right? Yeah, that's awesome. So describe what the term time management means in your world. I'm really looking forward to this answer, because I think a lot of people feel that time management or trying to find that quote unquote balance in life is an issue. How do you balance the demands of a business that has global reach with the necessity for self-care and time spent relaxing, whether it's with your horse or friends, etc.?
Oh boy. I mean, I plan ahead quite a lot. And so I think that's probably the answer. But I also think it's a like I don't think it's important that we spread the message that people need to be perfectly balanced. I know that's
Mhm.
not a nice thing to say,
Oh,
but
it's true. Yeah.
I personally just don't believe, I think that there's this message that's gone around that says that, especially it's much worse for women, especially women with children, to say, you know, you can have it all. You can have the perfect kids and the perfect business and the perfect health. And I just don't know if that's achievable. I mean, when I look back at my own scenario, it always felt like I over indexed for one thing at least, depending on what phase I was in. You know, like I've over indexed probably for horses and leisure the last year and a bit, but it's because of the phase that I'm in. And so I think I want to preface that with saying that I'm not sure that anyone ever gets it perfect, especially entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs are not cows. They're not standing in a field eating grass all day at an even pace. Okay. That's what the 9 to 5 industrial age of like putting one widget on a car factory floor was made for. Entrepreneurs are like lions. They like sleep, then they race and chase after something and they get it and they tear it apart and they go crazy. And, you know, they do these sprints that can be really intense. And so I think it's like really knowing yourself, knowing what scenario you need to get into to have those moments of sprints. You know, for me, I get up really early, and from 5 to 8, it's like it's golden time, right? That's when I can do stuff where I know people aren't calling me. And I really like the morning. I have a lot of energy in the morning. And so I spent years learning that about myself. And if I have complicated things I need to get done, or I need to work through models, or, you know, stuff that requires focus, I do it that way. Or I do time blocking.
Mhm.
It's like, as soon as I discovered that, and what I mean by that is my Calendly is set up for phone calls, and there's usually a day or two every week where I don't take any. So I would prefer for me to be on back to back every 30 minutes calls from 8 to 5, because then my brain goes in that mode. And then for the next day to have 0, so that I can work on the things maybe I told people the previous day I would,
Yeah.
or I can work on creative stuff. And so I really like that system. It's not everyone can do it if they've got they're working for people or something. There's lots of reasons why I can't do it, but I like that system. For me, I've just always planned really, really well ahead. Like, I'm the person that can tell you what I'm doing on March 4th, 2022. Like, I already know what I'm doing that day. So that's been my solution to it. But I've seen really successful entrepreneurs that don't have a handle on their schedule at all, and they're completely out of control, and they like it that way, and they're very, very, very successful. So I think that it's important, and they're late for everything, and they wake up really late. Like, they wake up at 10 o'clock in the morning, and they do their work, you know, at 1 a.m, and that works too. And people need to know that, because they're wired that way, and they like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Woo, there's a lot in there. Absolutely. So, so
Ranting.
yes, yeah, it's awesome. My Fitbit's telling me my heart rate's getting up there because I'm getting all excited about this information. Yeah, so definitely, I don't think that there's a true balance either. I've been striving for it, and I think in the last year and a half, I've realized there's no balance. I just need to plan. I'm a big planner. And I also like to really find myself in seasons, like you said, like the next 3 days is going to be like life coaching stuff, planning, planning for podcast interviews, doing that. And then I might have 3 or 4 days of being really busy massaging. So it's, I try to find that ebb and flow of it and still put enough energy towards it. Right. And then, yeah, time for family and husband and, friends. And yeah, it's really, and I don't want to say it's an art form, because I don't think we need to think of it as being as difficult as it is, right?
Yeah. And I think you just are always tweaking it.
Yeah.
But like, I remember there was a period in my life where like anything social just got cut. It just didn't make it the list.
Right.
And good friends stuck around, and it was like, sorry, not available right now, starting a company. So I think that's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember days where I'd get home and I'd get in the house, close the door behind me, and that was it. I wasn't going out with friends. They're like, come on. I'm like, no, I'm done. Yeah. So time, I don't know, energy management perhaps, and not feeling guilty about the fact that you need to look after yourself in a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, like doing maybe it's not often enough, but like an annual sort of check-in to say, how am I feeling about stuff and what should I work on changing? And I usually use that barometer too, is like, what is giving me more energy in life? What's taking it away? Can I take those things that's like really sucking energy out of me and just give it to somebody else, or figure out how to get rid of it?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of entrepreneurship that's all about self-awareness. And
Yeah.
and I really wonder how self-aware a lot of people are.
Yeah. And it's actually, the fact that you're a coach is great, because it's a really, really good topic for entrepreneurs. I remember when I was starting my business, I had this fancy apartment in Toronto, and I said to a friend, should I sell my apartment? Like, maybe I should. And he said to me, the entrepreneurial creativity that you need to focus on right now, you need the other stuff to stay still. And what he meant by that was, it was like, you need to foster what your superpower is, right? You need to, you need to know what that is, and try to keep the other variables standing still, so that you can focus on the one thing that only you can do.
Wow.
So anyways,
that is amazing advice right there. Geez, Nicole, this is awesome. Thank you. Okay. So again, in getting ready for this interview, one of the videos I've seen you in, you mentioned how it takes a village. You touched on this at the beginning of our conversation, how it takes a village to build a business, but the lack of cooperation and collaboration can really hinder the process. How do people get past the idea of playing it close to the vest when it comes to the greater good, especially in the horse world, right?
Yeah. I'm not a fan of playing it close to the vest, because I just think that the benefits of everybody knowing what you're doing from a business perspective, like, I don't think anyone should need to or want to know what you're doing in your personal life or other stuff. I just mean, if you're trying to launch a new company, I think the benefits of everyone knowing just far outweigh the cons. And the reason for that is, if you get that word out of what you're working on to as many people as possible, then they go out into the world. And I'm using my hands this way because it becomes like a network effect, right? So
Right.
then so that one person maybe you've told 5, each of them tell 5 more, and then it spreads. And then they can, even if they're not a customer, they can, when I was raising capital, when I got started, it would be someone who told somebody that I was starting this business, and they knew somebody who could invest or provide advice or make an introduction to a potential customer. And so for me, I think that going at it with that approach is really beneficial. I mean, obviously it depends on the business and it depends on other things. But I'm a proponent of that personally, because I've just seen it. I've seen the benefits of it work. And your original idea will not be the final idea. There's going to be many, many, many more. If you're on the ice truly next to customers, then the concepts will continue to improve and iterate and change. And guess what? Your first idea is probably not as good as you think it is.
Right.
As soon as you test it against the market, there's going to be others. So the question was, how do you balance playing it close to the vest versus not?
Yeah. And how can this be transferred to use in the equestrian world?
I think too, you need to ask for help, right? So if you're starting, I don't know, a product-based business in the equestrian world, it's like, give samples to 5 of your closest friends, get them to try it, get them to tell you honestly, would you use it? Would you not? Is this nice to have or need to have? Would you give me $50 for it right now? Like, that's an important test. Like, don't just be nice to me. And then get them to maybe tell other people or involve other people. And the cringy part, which really sucks, and like I hate it, but it's so important. It's so a part of the process, is for that next question to be, did I hear that you know the tax store owner from that tax store? Could you make that intro for me? And so that's the kind of stuff that starts to enable that snowballing I talked about earlier, which is hard to do. But I remember someone telling me early on, so long ago, that the best stuff happens after the uncomfortable conversations. And so it could be firing someone that happens to be your very close friend that's on your team. I did that, it sucks, but then it opens up that opening to bring someone else in, brings a whole nother level of energy into your organization. Or it's an uncomfortable conversation asking for something that, which studies are showing is much harder for women to do. And so I just think that once you've decided that, I want to start this business, or I want to go out, then you have to just get out there and start asking. And it can't always be seen as some favor that you are never able to repay. It just needs to be like, I'm out here and I'm going to start this. And I know that I can't do it on my own.
Yeah.
Nobody can.
Absolutely. And, like whether, like you said, it's an equestrian based product, or like even just different riders. Cause like, I feel like everybody's in the same arena, shall we say, but there's a lot of walls, a lot of, and I just really think that there's a lot of learning to be done. We're all in the same boat. Hopefully, one person can help out the other based on an experience they've had. Right. And I know that, that's kind of how I got started in the massaging. Was I had the kahunas, for lack of a better word, to walk up to a longtime Canadian show jumping team member and say, hey, you want to talk business? And he's like, yeah, let's talk business, and massaged for him for like 17, 18 years.
Fantastic.
And it's, a lot of experience I got out of that, like more people contacting me. And
that's your snowballing.
Yes, it led to such great professional growth on my behalf. It was a level of confidence. It's certainly a level of knowledge in the massage therapy arena that I would never have gotten otherwise. So I feel very blessed, but I've always been that kind of person. I'm not afraid to ask and
on you. It's a great anecdote. And it's exactly what I'm talking about. I similarly had one big break with one big customer that was also very influential in the industries I worked in, and they helped influence other customers. And so you're right, but it's just asking 7 times and getting a yes once. And so it's kind of, and then you have to surround yourself with positive people. And I think there's a reason I love being around other entrepreneurs, especially ones that have been successful, because they're optimistic and they hear about your problems and they're like, oh, well, you could solve it this way or that way. Or I know someone here, let me give you their number. Surround yourself with those people, because then, good things can happen.
Well, this is amazing. All right. One last question. So can you please tell us about Guest Log and where the inspiration for that came from?
That's right. I think that was one of the main reasons we were going to originally talk today. This went by so quickly, Tracey. Okay, Guest Log. I'm very proud of Guest Log. I purchased Guest Log in the spring of 2020. So COVID had hit, and these 2 brilliant engineers had built this platform kind of off the side of their desk while they were working on something else. And it's essentially very modern, originally contact tracing business. So every facility gets a QR code. When somebody arrives, they take a photo of the QR code. And originally it was just contact tracing. So it had your name and your number. I then hired some engineers, and we kind of blew it open to allow facilities to have custom questions, upload their waiver, and do proof of vaccination. So now it's turned into a whole facility clearance solution. So I show up at a facility and they can ask any question under the sun. It doesn't have to be COVID related. It could be anything. Like, I know that we're powering a large fishery in BC, for instance, and they've got safety questions that have to be answered. But for me, as a farm owner, the first thing when we bought this farm, I was like, wait a minute. So someone can just show up on my property and go hacking, or they can just come and ride, and someone has to go find that dusty waiver and remember to get them to sign it and then keep it in some filing cabinet somewhere.
Yes.
And I was so busy at the time that I was like, that's nuts. And I don't want to think about it again. But I spent a bunch of time in Kentucky last spring, for instance, and in Florida with the horses. And in America, it's even worse than here, the liability of having people on your property and having some random paper waiver that's gone somewhere. So I just thought, you know what, and we pivoted, and now we're really helping farm owners. So basically there's just a QR code at the entrance. When a guest shows up, they take their phone, they take a photo of the QR code, they answer some questions, and then they sign the waiver digitally, and they acknowledge, you know, I'm assuming the risk. I know that riding horses is very dangerous. And for the farm owner, every waiver is timestamped and stored, and it's just in a platform that they can download. So it's very simple from a technology perspective, but the user interface is really nice. And I just think that there's a lot of opportunity. I wish I had more time to spend on it. I just think there's a lot of opportunity to bring digitization around this waiver signing activity, because everyone forgets. And, you know, I've heard horror stories of someone just turning a horse out and getting kicked in the head and being in the hospital. And you know, weird things can happen around horses, and having the farm owners liable is just, it's not good for the industry, because you're not going to have great farm owners or lots of farm owners in the future. So anyways, I'm kind of excited about it. I do need to spend more time on it, and hopefully we can get more and more farms using it.
Well, that is so exciting. And it's very exciting to know that that's where innovation, that's what innovation is. It starts as this great idea.
Contact tracing to farm waivers. Yeah.
And, you know, like, because in my intro, like I said, anybody who's been in at least Ontario this summer showing, because you said they use it at Angelstone, do they?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We had it at Angelstone, Palgrave, tons of shows across, even in the States. We had a bunch of shows using it.
So yeah, this is great. This is, I don't know. I just think in those day-to-day things, when we come across stuff like that, there's a story, there's someone's vision behind it, right? Just as with anything like that. So
our customer list is hilarious, because it's like Joey's, and then like all these restaurants from the early days of the pandemic, and then horse shows.
Awesome. So are you going to get down to Florida and show this year? Oh no.
We're going to Aiken, actually.
Okay.
My two show jumpers are down for the count. I'm probably going to breed them both. Wonderful mares. But so we're taking the fox hunter and the eventer, and just going to go play around. So no pressure, pressure winter. It'll be good.
Exactly. Have some fun. Well, thank you, Nicole Verkindt, for taking this time. I know, very busy day. You are a wonderful inspiration. I am completely inspired. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while, probably even before you knew it. You've been on my hit list for a while.
Thank you, Tracey. I really appreciate it.